You're listening to They Shoot Films with Ken Mercer and F.T. Kosempa.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of They Shoot Films. I'm here as always with the great F.T. Kosempa. F.T., how are you?
I am swell, Ken. Okay. How are you doing, buddy?
Well, did I sound cheery enough? Is my question for you. We had a comment from one of our listeners who said that they thought you should start out these podcasts because you were much cheerier than I was. So did I sound more cheery this time?
Really, really cheery. Unbelievable. Maybe too cheery.
Well, the comment threw me into a deep spiral of
Depression.
Of depression and self-doubt because I was like, because I don't know. I don't think of you as the cheeriest person. So the fact that they said you were demonstrably more cheery than I am definitely caused me to pause.
Says something, doesn't it?
This episode's film, which is American Hustle, directed by David O. Russell in the great year of 2013 A.D. And in this episode, FT, you and I are going to try to get into American Hustle and kind of analyze it from the feet up,
so to speak. Another recurring motif.
Yes. Do you know where that one came from?
I do not.
Apparently, Christian Bale contributed that to the film. It was something that the actor Bob Hoskins had told Christian Bale about being a successful actor. That he said, you've got to be committed to the character. You got to do it you got to be the character from the feet up. Interesting,
because the other expression would be from the head down.
Yeah, well, I guess that may be relevant there. That maybe
they meet at the genitals.
Well, no, that you don't. That acting really shouldn't be from the
heady.
Yeah, heady, from cerebral. It should be, and certainly we'll get into the performances here. But in this case, Christian Bale and some of the other actors definitely seem to be working from the heart and from instinct rather than from the head.
From preparation, yes, indeed. Yeah. Okay.
So what was your general take on American Hustle, FT? If I could ask you.
You may ask me, and I'll tell you straight out that I liked it quite a bit.
I liked this movie a great deal, but I had a tough time with it at the beginning, coming from our previous film, which was Alexander Payne's The Holdovers, and as you know, I lavished a lot of praise on The Holdovers and the way Alexander Payne filmed it, and I had a tough time adjusting to this film because whereas Payne's film was so well, the shots were so well choreographed and planned out, and this one, just the constant use of Steadicam was just all over the place for me, and I had a tough time with it. I'd like to quote from someone I consider one of our greatest living film theorists, if I might.
Me?
Close. The writer was speaking of another director. He doesn't move the camera all that much, and when he does move the camera, it's always motivated, which I really appreciate when these days where you strap a Steadicam on a dude and just have them run all over the place. Did you recognize that quote?
I recognize the quote, but I don't know the name. Inform me, please.
That would be me on the podcast of The Holdovers. So that's a quote from that podcast. You can go back and listen to it if you want sometime. So I was really I was struggling with all the just seemingly random roving Steadicam movements, and I settled down with it. And then I saw a making of film about this movie, and a light bulb went off for me because I saw the way David O. Russell was actually using the Steadicam. Did you see any of that behind the scenes stuff, FT?
I did not.
So the setup he had was a Steadicam operator with a camera on a Steadicam. an umbilical cord going to a video monitor, which David O. Russell held, cradled in one arm, I believe in his left arm, he cradled it like a baby. And then with his right arm, he had that on the Steadicam operator's shoulder. And David O. Russell's just looking down at the video monitor, basically guiding the Steadicam operator through the shot. So it was almost like David O. Russell was shooting the film handheld, but obviously much steadier due to the Steadicam. When I saw that, I forgave him for the use of the Steadicam.
In other words, it just steadied up a handheld.
Basically, basically, he had some. He knew where the actors were going to be. He had things blocked. He knew where he wanted to go, but then he just drove the car himself. Basically,
would they shoot even still stuff, like the opening shot itself, which is one of the most amazing shots recently I've seen. That tilt up from his gut,
right?
Christian Bale's gut to his doing his elaborate comb over. Was that shot on sticks or a Steadicam?
I don't know.
I wonder if he just had the guy, or the woman, whoever it was, just available all the time for everything. I mean, it would make sense in a way,
Right. What this film has, and I think so much of it is the use of the Steadicam, is this incredible frenetic energy. And coming back to another one of our previous podcasts where we looked at The Social Network, David Fincher's film, we were talking about Fincher's elaborate planning of everything and having things so controlled is fantastic. But I talked on that podcast about what you lose is this incredible sense of energy that you get from, and I said, a film by David O. Russell or a film by Paul Thomas Anderson, basically a film by any director with three names, I would say. But having this, this incredible energy in their films. And this film, with David O. Russell in general, Three Kings it's like an amusement, that film is like an amusement park ride. This one too, there's so many scenes where the energy of, and so much of it comes from the acting, but also the writing and also the frenetic camera. Yeah. The scenes just, they feel, they come right out of the screen and wrap you up.
They move.
They're not contained. They're not contained by the two-dimensionality of a movie or a TV screen.
Yes, they are.
So you're disagreeing?
No,
with
I think they're very. They're very active. It does. I agree with the energy aspect of yours. I think as far as the physics, I have a real issue with that. Maybe I'm too science-based. Maybe not. I don't know. That'll be for us to decide. But I agree, the energy level versus.
Anyhow,
it's it's a different thing.
Please, if you're listening out there, please hit the subscribe button because we need more subscribers so we can get ads, so we can afford to hire a scientific advisor for this podcast. But until that time, we're on our own. One thing I want to, what do you think the theme of this movie is?
Oh boy, integrity, honesty. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting that you brought those things up because I think it is about that. I was going to ask you, but it's always so boring to talk about what genre is it, and I feel like you got to place this film in the con game genre.
Yes, right. I agree.
But we don't really have to talk about that. But in terms of the theme, I do think it is about fake, it's so much about faking and things not being what they seem, people acting like, trying to project a different persona than they are. And I think we're going to get into that. But it was one thing that I wanted to talk about here was I read an interview with David O. Russell where he said something interesting, which was he was brought this project and got very interested in the ab scam scandal plot. Sorry, that was a funny line I was trying to remember, or a funny bit where the actor I think it's
Pena.
Michael Pena is playing a fake Arab, and he gets upset. He says he finds the name of the operation Abscam to be offensive to Arabs, and I think Irving says, "What the fuck do you care? You're not a real Arab."
You're Mexican.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Anyway, David R. Russell said, it's quaint to think about it. It was such a big scandal at the time, these politicians taking these bribes. And David R. Russell said, isn't it quaint to think about it today? This was a big deal that these politicians were taking $75,000 in a briefcase. And he compared it to today, where after Citizens United, every politician is raking in millions or billions from who knows what for who knows what. And it's just commonplace.
I had the same exact thought. I said, it's just free speech being handed in those suitcases these days. It's the equivalent of just like, you speak into a bag and your words are there and you hand it over and it turns into cash. Yeah, it's crazy. Yep. Quaint indeed.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the origins of this film, how it came to be? Do you think that would be worthwhile?
I think it'd be of interest to me, and I know at least 5 other people.
So David O. Russell gets attention with flirting with disaster, and it's a time where Hollywood is looking for these outside talents. It's a time, and by the way, I found a fantastic book which I would recommend that I've been reading for this podcast, which I'd somehow missed. It's called Rebels on the Backlot by Sharon Waxman, and it's about the 90s directors. So it's specifically about David O. Russell, Paul Thomas Anderson, Steven Soderbergh, Quentin Tarantino, Fincher. That's 5. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting, but you can find the book. And so Three Kings is a huge success, and he takes that success. He's at one of those moments in every writer-director's career that they dream about, where he can do whatever he wants next, blank check, and he decides to do I Heart Huckabees, which was a complete failure at the box office critically, and I only saw it once, and I didn't get it. Now I know, FT, you rewatched it recently. What was your take on I Heart Huckabees?
Up and down. I would appreciate something that is different, and it sure is different.
Right.
But there was such a strain to it. It was a forced aspect. It felt it was odd. But again, it's not your typical thriller. It's not your typical plot. It's something unusual, and so I gave him credit for that. Unlike the Tenenbaums, in that category for me. I don't know why I just linked those two, but
it's so weird that you brought that up. I was going to skip over it. Gene Hackman died last week, and I thought we should do something for him, but with him, I didn't know what. So we'll do this bit, which is that in this book, Rebels on the Backlot, she talks about Wes Anderson hiring Gene Hackman as Royal Tenenbaum in that film, and that Hackman wouldn't take direction from
the 12-year-old.
The very young Wes Anderson, and Gene Hackman just wouldn't take direction from him. So Wes Anderson decides to try child psychology on Gene Hackman, and he starts going up to Angelica Houston, who's obviously in Royal Tenenbaums, and would go up to her on set and said, "Angelica, can I talk to you about something?" And he would take her over into the corner and start whispering direction to her. And Hackman would feel left out, and he would start coming over. And Wes Anderson kept doing this. But then Hackman apparently couldn't deal with it anymore and comes up and says, "Wes," and you have to really picture Gene Hackman doing this. He says, "Wes, can I talk to you for a minute?" And he takes Wes Anderson into a closet and shuts the door and starts screaming at him, "You can't fucking take an actor off in the corner. You don't direct that."
Wow. Wow, nice.
This book has a lot of great stuff in it. Oh, sorry, Wes Anderson, I think is the 6th director. No, he's not. I forget who the 6th director she focuses on is. And I apologize to the director we're leaving out.
Whoever that is. It's weird. And I apologize to all the people that I haven't hurt yet. Preemptive apologies all around, right? We should start the show with that.
But yeah. Sorry. So we were talking about David O. Russell. He does They Heart Huckabees, which most people find incomprehensible. I remember it as being incomprehensible. Of course, FT, with your love for incomprehensible cinema, you felt right at home. But even you didn't like it. So now,
well, a semi. It was a little bit dumb. It got a little dumb.
So it's a huge failure. And not only that, he and his wife have a son who it turns out to be bipolar. They don't know what's wrong with him. He gets divorced from his wife. He really blows up his career. And of course, he had pissed so many people off in terms of the way they treated him. It turned into one of those, like the great Alan Toussaint song, On Your Way Down. Are you familiar with that song, FT?
I am not.
I recommend. No, I can't sing, but you should. Everybody should go and listen to it. But the lyric, I think it's the chorus, is the same people you misuse on your way up, you might meet on your way back down, and so David O. Russell's career was just effectively dead until, and this is where Sidney Pollack comes into play. Sidney Pollack had bought the novel Silver Linings Playbook, and he hired David O. Russell to write it. And Russell was doing drafts of it, and then a year before Sidney Pollack died, which was 2007, he said to David O. Russell, "I think you're the only person who could really you may be the only filmmaker who could do this film, and I hope but then he died, so he couldn't help David O. Russell do it. And so that script languished. And then Mark Wahlberg, who David O. Russell had cast in Three Kings, and Wahlberg did a fantastic job in Three Kings. I think your take on Wahlberg in Three Kings.
Yeah, Wahlberg is great. And he was a good a bright light in Huckabees too, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. I forgot that Wahlberg was in Huckabee.
Big part, yeah.
Oh, so that makes sense. So then Wahlberg had the rights, was developing The Fighter. And he said, I want David O. Russell to do this. I think the studio fought him, but Wahlberg had the clout and said, no, brought it to David O. Russell, who did The Fighter, and that was a big success and paved the way for him to be able to do Silver Linings, which paved the way for him to be able to do American Hustle, which is the subject of today's podcast on They Shoot Films.
Brings us back to yes.
I would feel remiss now in not pinning you to you are a Sidney. You do not like Sidney Pollack, or do you just not like Tootsie?
Oh yeah, I don't like Tootsie.
So do you dislike Sidney Pollack in general?
I never met the fellow.
Right, but in terms of his, well, let's start with
what other films? Name some films.
3 Days of the Condor.
That was all right.
The Yakuza, the Bob Mitchum film. And Tootsie, which I like Tootsie a lot, and I've been asking you to have an open mind and watch it again, because the other thing I love about Sidney Pollack is his acting, and I think Sidney Pollack in Tootsie is textbook for how to act in a comedy. He plays Dustin Hoffman's long-suffering talent agent, and he plays it so straight, and which makes the laughs, really makes the comedy work. But he's fantastic as an actor in Tootsie. I think he's fantastic in a civil action. Do you remember Sidney Pollack in a civil action, FT?
I do not.
Worth watching. He plays the attorney for W.R. Grace. And of course, I think Pollack is fantastic as Marty Bach in Michael Clayton. Would you agree with me on that one?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So,
but you were talking about Sidney as an actor or as a director?
I like. Well, again, I like
as
him
an actor. I think he's great.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right,
no question.
All right. So we're in agreement.
I just don't like Tootsie. I think it's a dumbass movie.
I would just urge you to. I used to feel the same way, and then I matured and I watched it again, and I saw how great it. I hated it at the time when it came out, and I thought I always hated it. And then, I mean, how many times have you only seen it once?
Yes.
I would urge you to give it another look with an open mind.
I think we should have a podcast just about this.
Okay, yeah, we can. You want to do Tootsie
No, I do not want to do Tootsie.
Right.
I want to do a podcast where you try to convince me, give me all the reason.
Well, that's every podcast, basically.
I know, you bring it up. Tootsie. Hey, Tootsie. Right. What do you have? I like Tootsie Rolls.
But so we agree that we like Pollock as an actor. Do you know that he started as an actor? He went.
I believe it. I can tell.
He studied with Sandy Meisner at what was the Neighborhood Playhouse? Was that Meisner's?
I have no idea.
School. Yeah. So we agreed on that. So that's a good thing. Let's go back to talk a little bit about David O. Russell being difficult because people love sinuendo as they say in L.A.
Sinuendo, what's that mean?
I don't know. In L.A. Confidential, that's Danny DeVito's thing. Sinuendo is his big thing in L.A. Confidential. So, are you aware of all the stories about David O. Russell and how difficult he was?
He and Lily Tomlin had a
yes.
Oh, right, where he calls her like names and shit because she's confused about where the story's going on Huckabees, and he's like, I worked for goddamn fucking 3 years on this shit, but I think he also, he was really hard on Amy Adams in this film.
Yes, Amy Adams said she would not work with him.
Never work with him again, right? And Amy Adams then said that Jennifer Lawrence is, quote, Teflon. I remember reading that. Anyhow.
Yeah.
Gene and what's his name, Clooney, as you said, would never work with him again because just how abusive he is. I mean, he yells at people.
Yeah.
He yells at crew, right? He pushes people around physically. I mean, the guy's fucking out of control.
Let's go back to the Lily Tomlin story because it's a good story. So yes, he I think it was on Huckabees, which was the second time he had worked with Lily Tomlin since she had been in Flirting with Disaster. He went nuts on her on set, and someone filmed it. It went live on the internet, so it got millions of views.
Oh, right.
And he called her the C word, which was interesting because in most of the press around this. Many reports say he called her the worst thing you can call a woman. And I'm curious about that because do you well, first of all, I'd like to go on the record or say I've never called a woman the C word. I've never said to somebody else, in
cunt, you mean? Cunt.
Oh, that's the C word?
That's the C word, not what you thought it was.
No, I'm only kidding. Yes, I've never said. I've never called a woman that. I've never said to somebody else, "Oh, that woman is the C word." So I totally get that it's and not a good
ugly.
That it's an ugly word. But this notion that it's the worst thing you could call because it's equivalent. Then isn't it equivalent to calling a guy a dick? If you called me, well, you always call me a dick. That's not the worst.
Because you are.
Right. But it's not, if I called you a dick, would you think that's the worst thing I could call you?
There's a lot of bad ththings you can call people. But
well, I mean, I think again, if you called me a dick, it would not be as bad as like, remember in the movie, The Hangover, remember what was the word Zach Galifianakis uses in The Hangover? He calls somebody a retard. Remember that? He says,
yes,
that guy's a retard. That guy's a retard. And I think it's Bradley Cooper who says, yes. What do you mean? What do you mean retard? What's a retard?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
just to make some people who are squeamish out there, there's a distinction in philosophy of language between use and mention. You can mention the word, like the word five has 4 letters in it, and you can use the word. I was not using the word when I mentioned the word cunt because I can't stand this, childish F word, B word, C word. It gets confusing after a certain point too. I mean, what's the B word? Bitch? I know it is. Is that the other thing that people can call somebody or bro? I don't know.
No, but it's. I mean, would you agree though? It's curious that this. Again, I don't even want to say it. The C word is the worst thing to call a woman.
Yes,
okay.
But whatever. I mean, it's just like what is the worst thing to call anybody? I don't know. Don't say late for.
Let's not go there.
Yes, let's go there. Anyhow, so he calls her a cunt, and then she gets freaked out, right?
Yes, and the story doesn't end there. The story does not end there. So David O. Russell is going to get, I think, Director of the Year award at the Gotham Awards in New York, and the host is the comedian Mike Birbiglia, and and Birbiglia decides to do a riff about David O. Russell, where he just reads the whole transcript of, from of what he did to Lily Tom, and he just reads it straight, and it's a great intro because he says, he somehow starts it out as saying,
the great director Elia Kazan once said, "You do whatever it takes to get the shot." David O. Russell once said, "I'm just trying to fucking help you. You understand me? I'm just being a fucking collaborator. I'm just trying to help you figure out the fucking picture, okay, bitch? I'm not here to be fucking yelled at. I didn't work in this thing for 3 fucking years to have some fucking cunt yell at me in front of the crew when I'm trying to help you, bitch." Two great directors basically saying the same thing.
One last thing about David O. Russell and being a difficult director. Nora Dunn, who is in Three Kings, she plays the television journalist. You remember her in that? She said of David O. Russell, which I thought this was pretty interesting, David's always in the moment, but it's not always the moment you're in. What? How do you feel, FT, about directors who, you said it, David O. Russell was rough on crew, rough on, not a nice guy on set, is probably a kind way to put it. How do you feel about directors who act like that?
I don't think he's the only one.
Right.
I think I think some of his stuff is just more egregious. He got caught on video.
Right.
There's a long tradition of difficult directors, people. I mean, for example, how about Fincher making you do 99 takes? People get exhausted with that. It's not the same thing, but it's, there's a difficulty
well, I think
there.
It's interesting that you pointed that because, again, it comes back to something I was saying a while ago, the difference between, because Fincher is so controlled and not, I don't think he is not known for yelling at people, but he's so precise and, like you said, doing it 99 times, whereas David O. Russell is apparently very voluble. Is that the correct word there, FT? The V word?
Volatile and loud and voluble.
What does voluble mean?
I don't know. Doesn't that mean just loud?
I thought so.
But also volatile. I just wonder also to what degree Chaplin, for example, people just didn't, question him. Oh, von Stroheim was notoriously difficult, very yelling and screaming, and
right. Which is what's so great about him in Sunset Boulevard, where he's
the opposite
servile, the S word,
exactly.
the S word,
the G word, good one.
But let's get into kind of stepping through the scenes that stood out for us. FT, would you like to do that?
Indeed.
How do you feel about starting with the first scene, which is Christian Bale as Irving? What's Irving's last name? Do you know?
Oh, I forgot. Rosenfeld, something like that?
Yeah. Christian Bale is Irving Rosenfeld working on his comb-over haircut.
Oh, my God. Yeah. That's fantastic. What a great opening.
Yeah. It was interesting. Apparently, they rehearsed that. David O. Russell and Christian Bale rehearsed that for like 3 days straight. I don't think it was in the script. And it wasn't in the script because it was apparently Bale who, once he was cast, said to David O. Russell, "I want to do this comb over and I want to gain 40 pounds. And David O. Russell was like, "Really? You want it?" And Bale said, "Yeah, I got to do it." And I guess once Christian Bale had that comb over going, that's what led to starting with that scene. And yeah, what's great about it is it obviously sets up kind of the notion or the theme for the whole film, which is nothing is what it seems. People are covering up all these things. Everything's fake. Yep. And as Christian Bale talks about in an interview for the film, it just sums up the Irving. He says it's so ridiculous because he's doing this elaborate comb over, which is ridiculous. Anybody who looks at him, is ridiculous. It's not going to fool anybody. But what's interesting is because of Irving's confidence.
Yep.
He pulls it off. It gives him the confidence, and then he pulls it off, even though it's completely ridiculous. I'd like to point out that it really presaged our current president, who has a similar thing with his hair. It's so fake, and but it's like, I don't know. It's like the emperor has nobody says anything. It's so clearly fake. And I guess America keeps buying it.
Yeah, but as Amy Adams says, and there was, Sidney at that point, he wasn't necessarily in the best shape, and he had this elaborate comb over, but there was something about him, Also, then he says when he meets her, which is interesting because he, take a little issue with what there was a great insecurity in him because, well, we'll find out later. But when he finally meets Sidney, remember he says, I'm no longer ashamed. I don't have to be ashamed of myself.
Right.
That I feel good about myself. It's a great scene, though. My God, that first shot.
It's good because it also sets up one of the mirrors of the film, which is Richie, played by Bradley Cooper, who his hair is he does this weird perm with his hair with curlers.
Yes.
And the other mirror, of course, is Sidney. Is it Sidney and Edith? Or those are the two names for Amy Adams?
Yes.
Yes, for Sidney and Edith, who, of course, Edith talks with a British accent, even though she's not British. And which astounds the Richie character at the end when he declares that he wants to marry her, is in love with her, and she's why are you talking like that?
Wait, you want an accent? An American accent?
No, there is no English. There's only American. There is no English.
What are you talking about?
English.
Stop it! You're
You're freaking me out really bad. Yes.
Yes. Let's jump to the pool party. Do you like that scene?
I do.
Interesting to me. What did that scene remind you of? Another director, another three-name director, or another movie? FT.
Wait. What's the one about the porno movie?
You're joking, right? You know the name of it, don't you?
I forgot.
Oh, really? Okay, I thought you were. Yeah. So it's so reminiscent of Boogie Nights. I think
Nights.
I think intentionally, and the pool parties in Boogie Nights. And I think it's intentional. Paul, again, from Rebels in the Backlot. P.T. Anderson and David O. Russell went to Cannes together. I forget what film. When P.T. Anderson was there for Hard Eight, and I think David O. Russell was there for Flirting with Disaster, and they hung out the whole time in Cannes. And I think are friendly, but according to the book, really didn't become tight friends because David O. Russell apparently was just a pot guy, whereas Paul Thomas Anderson, at least back then, was much more of a hard partier, I guess cocaine and stuff like that. So their partying styles apparently
didn't mesh.
Yeah.
No purple pills.
But David O. Russell, big fan of Boogie Nights and Paul Thomas Anderson, and I think kind of an homage, but definitely I felt that in the pool party scene. It's also interesting. You see the character that Paul Herman plays later in the film. He's known as Alphonse Simone, the accountant to Victor Taleggio. But of course,
the lawyer. Yeah,
right. Sorry, the lawyer. Thanks, FT. But of course, he's actually Ed Malone, the cold cut king of Long Island.
She holds up the bologna in the packages.
Yeah.
But that was a good one. There's a little trivia note about actresses. There's an actress there, and she's also later on in that Simone scene,
right.
In the lawyer's office. Yes, the secretary with him taking notes is the woman in The Holdovers, who is the prostitute that approaches.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it says, "Does Daddy need a candy cane?" And he goes, "Well, I'm a pre-diabetic," and all that. It's the same woman, I think. I was looking going like,
FT, I was about to take my hat off to you and say, good eye, and now you're just saying you think.
Well, I'll bet. I'll bet you a million nothings. You know?
Okay. Any listeners out there, please contact us if you'd like to give FT $1 million.
Nothings.
Or if you'd like FT to send you $1 million.
A million nothings.
right here on this recording. And any court, any judge can use the recording to issue a demand for FT to pay you off.
Of $1 million nothings.
Well, here's some more trivia for you, FT.
Yes.
Since you started us down the well-worn trivia path, what's the significance of Duke Ellington's Jeep's Blues and the album At Newport?
I don't know. That was something that I was going to ask you, my friend.
Yeah, so it's fake. It is a fake.
There's no such thing?
No. So Duke Ellington's performance at Newport was a sensation. Crowd went wild and a lot of press about it. So, of course, the record company wanted to put out an album of the recording, but the mics were screwed up. So Ellington went into the studio, recorded these songs, and they put on the applause and the live sounds. So it's a fake
For the whole record?
Apparently, half of it is done that way, and that's why it's interesting. You'll see it doesn't say live. The album cover doesn't say Ellington live at Newport. It says Ellington at Newport.
At Newport.
Yeah,
you're right. Rechanneled for stereo too.
Well, yeah, I'm glad that was the next thing I was going to bring up. Again, talking about fakes. It's fake stereo.
Yeah.
What'd you think of Christian Bale's stomach?
It was something, that was incredible. That was a great scene of their back and forth when they're sizing each other up, both in those weird knit outfits, those white knit outfits.
Yeah, the wardrobe was fantastic in this movie, as was the production design. When I saw Christian Bale's stomach, I assumed it was prosthetic.
Oh, no way.
Oh, really? I just couldn't believe that he would do that, but he did. He gained 40 pounds for this film.
Like De Niro, in Raging Bull.
Right.
Just like, and the hair. I mean, he obviously shaved his head. It wasn't like a, samurai look,
Right. Yeah. He gained 40 pounds. He herniated 2 discs because of the weight, and also he changed his posture for the film.
It's slumpier. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah,
and that caused him to herniate 2 discs. Damn. What do you think about actors? You brought up De Niro. It seems to be something that actors aspire to. I guess as part of being a real actor is, I'm going to gain 40 pounds for this role, or I'm going to lose 40 pounds for this role. I think Matthew McConaughey did it for Dallas Buyers Club. I think he lost a lot of weight to be someone who had AIDS. What do you think about actors who put on 40 pounds?
Commitment.
Oh, it's definitely a commitment. Would you do it?
I did it for this podcast. I put on 2.5 pounds since the last podcast.
Yes, and
wait, I lost 2.5. One of the two.
Right. No, and it definitely is good for your voice. It's just.
What do you think about that, Ken? Do you think it's like a cop out that you should be able to? But he's going after a look. He had something specific in mind.
No, I think my question for you was, would you do it? And I don't know if you answered.
I did answer. I said I did it. I gained 2.5 pounds.
No, that was a joke. Would you put on 40 pounds for a role?
I would be of that school that would, consider it. Yes. How about 35? I'd put on.
Oh yeah, 35. Yeah, dude.
35, no problem.
Yeah. No, I just think. I mean, I would be well. First of all, it's obviously not healthy.
Right.
But I would be afraid that I wouldn't be able to get it off.
Right.
I also, that even though I get a lot of my income comes from this podcast, the bulk of my income comes from my bathing suit modeling career, and I would be afraid of stretch marks.
You should be. You know what? I never. I'm sorry. I wasn't sensitive about that, but you asked the question, so yeah.
No, but yeah. I really. So
speaking of bathing suits, I thought you might also consider a nude modeling career, like Who's the Big Picture, when Amy Adams has the job at was it Cosmopolitan or Vanity Fair? You notice that?
Actually, I was.
I was going to put your face on that.
I was a nude model. But my career did not do well. I was known as Stumpy Mercer.
Stumpy. So you did have a middle name, Ken Stumpy Mercer.
I had to remove from my birth certificate.
Surgically removed. You had a liposuction from your birth certificate.
I do admire the actor's commitment, but
Yes.
I don't know if I would do it. And again, so not only did he gain the weight, lose the weight, but herniating 2 discs. I've herniated my disc. I would
No joke.
just like I think when we discussed, I forget which episode it was where I talked about my tooth. I talked about tooth pain, and I said tooth pain is not fun pain, and you agreed. I would say disc herniation pain is not fun pain either.
You got to make up your mind. Which one is fun pain of the two? I would take, yeah, it's a tough one. Actually, for a small period when I had my herniated disc, I did have both. And then the pain gate closed one of them, the tooth pain. I didn't feel that as much. The back was worse for me, actually. So.
Do you think it was the multiple types of pain, or was it the oxycodone?
I wasn't on any. I can't take that. I mean, I tried at the beginning a couple, and I was just like terrible. The only thing that worked was Ambien to get me to sleep.
Right.
But anyhow, yeah.
I'd like to move on to another scene. Let me know if I skip over anything. I'm going to stop saying that, FT, because it's repetitive. So if I do skip over anything, just let me know. But otherwise, I'm not going to ask you. The museum scene where Irving and Sidney are trying to teach Bradley Cooper the ropes, and they're looking at a painting, and he points out that the Rembrandt on the wall of the museum is forged. And he posed a question, which is something along the lines of, so who's the greater artist, the artist or the forger?
Which is a good question, is it not?
Well, there's a lot of levels to this one. First of all, I cannot confirm this, just as you cannot confirm that the actress was also in the Holdovers, but I'm pretty sure that in Amy Adams' apartment, Sidney's apartment, you do see the Rembrandt hanging on the wall. So I think there's an implication that the real Rembrandt is hanging. Because as you remember that Irving and Sidney Greenlee had an art business. They were dealing that. So there's an implication that that might very well be a forgery hanging in that museum.
Yes.
After this movie came out, that museum, which I think is in Worcester, Massachusetts, somewhere in Western Massachusetts, they started getting bombarded with rumors that that was a forgery. And so much so that the museum had to issue a statement after this movie came out. Well, a couple of things, against truth being stranger than fiction. That painting was stolen from the museum before this movie came out. The painting was stolen. It was recovered. And then everybody wanted to know, wait, is this really a forgery? Did it get stolen and now, they returned to forgery?
Replaced?
Right.
Right.
So the museum was forced to come out with a public statement saying, no, this is the real Rembrandt. But then it got so much attention that they found that art scholars looked at that and said, wait a second, it's not a forgery, but it's not a Rembrandt. That painting was never painted by Rembrandt.
Are you serious?
It was painted by some student of Rembrandt's.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Really weird story.
How about that? Yeah. Well, when Orson Welles said, F for fake, it really shows you the degree of which these the forgers were so incredible. I mean, so that's what resonated when Irving asked that question. Who's the master?
Right.
Yeah. Also, the next line is also important for the film because he says, it's not black and white like you think there, to Richie. The world's extremely gray.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, again, the production design, the costumes, wardrobe in this film is fantastic. And I wonder, I didn't have enough time to go back and look, but definitely in the casino scene, Richie is gray. He's in a gray suit at a formal event, and I want to go back and look. I wonder if he's outfitted in gray throughout the film. That he is the gray character in this film.
Not at the beginning though. Remember, it's when Richie goes, "You're dressing me like him now," you know.
Right.
There's a couple things I want to bring up that happened before really quickly.
Okay.
I love the scene in the dry cleaners when he and Amy Adams are in the turnstile.
Yes.
With the dry cleaning going around them.
Yes.
You know, that's repeated later on in a very, very...
I love that. I love that too.
Oh, that's fantastic. I just was, so moving, And also, an interesting thing, a good choice, when they make their commitment to each other and she comes in speaking the English accent then in his office, right?
Right.
I love you. You have me, is what she says. It cuts to a baby stroller. Now, talk about con men. You usually think... in the iconography of cinema, in the history of movies, that, they had a baby.
Right.
Right? Two people get married, oh, I love you, and cut to, this is the way we're going to do a deletion of time.
Right.
We're going to move into 2 years from now, they have a baby. Wrong.
Right.
This is their first mark, and you learn the whole technique. You keep denying it. You're very, you're very picky, but you say no, say no, say no, say no.
Right.
Very great economical scene. I loved it. Yeah.
I wonder if David O. Russell specifically made Irving a dry cleaner, knowing he would do, have that visual thing of the dry cleaning carousel.
I think so.
Carousel.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because David O. Russell talks about having family all over the 5 boroughs of New York. I wonder if he had dry cleaners in the family.
In the Bronx.
That led up to that. I wanted to jump to the Studio 54 scene. Are you okay with that?
Well, okay. But wait. The surprise to me, again, the con of the screenplay and of Russell, is that all of a sudden you're introduced that Irving has a wife. So you have this romantic thing going on that we're of one like mind. We're both going to be con people, he and Amy Adams, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden there's Jennifer Lawrence. And we get that incredible first scene where she just twists her, and we get the great line, that she was the Picasso of passive aggressive karate, because she's the con of, the con man, and that was just the first of 5 scenes with her, who, in my opinion, those scenes in general really steal the show. And that's why I think in some sites they will say, oh, this is a black comedy. No, this is a movie where a character is funny. There's funny things being said, but does not make it a comedy. Anyhow,
Why are they singing Tom Jones' Delilah?
I do not know, Ken. Why?
Here's what I think. What do you know about Samson and Delilah, which is from the Old Testament, F.T.?
Doggies. Not much. I was raised a Catholic, so we didn't read the Old Testament. It was the Baltimore Catechism. Why did God make you? God made me to know him, love him, serve him in this world. Just
Dad, why don't we ever read the Old Testament?
Dad.
It's too Jewy, Frank.
Oh. I was sent to my room instead of baseball cards, I was sent to my room because Mommy made a special cocktail. There's the sun in the lamp.
So coming back to the Old Testament, Samson and Delilah. As far as my knowledge of it goes, Samson was this big, powerful, incredibly strong man, and the Philistines recruited Delilah to sell him out, to basically to go against him and find out, what was the secret of his strength.
The comb over.
Well, it was his hair. It turned out it was Samson's hair, and then she went to cut it off, as the story goes. So, I think it's definitely they're singing Delilah for a reason.
I agree with the curlers, the hair.
Yep.
Hairdressing.
Yes.
Good one.
I want to go to the science oven.
The science oven.
Specifically, the science oven explosion. Really, I thought really well done by Mr. Russell there in terms of great physical comedy with the setup of Carmen gives him the science oven, and he gives it to Rosalind, and then we see Rosalind at home and he's very specific. Do not put metal in it. Do not put metal. And then we see her, oh yeah, mocking him. Don't put metal.
Yes.
And then she puts metal, and then boom, the thing blows up. And then the great payoff is Danny, the son, saying, "Another fire," because she's already had one fire at the beginning of the film.
Yes,
it's really. I thought it was very funny.
It was, and the interesting thing there's the line again. No finger pointing. She goes, "Not that fire extinguisher. That one's empty.
Right.
The big one." This brings up a sort of negative point. In the first, with the sun lamp. The sun, Daddy. There's a sun in the lamp.
Right.
Wasn't her face?
The sun lamp caused the first fire.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
And they should outlaw those because I'm sure, she goes, I'm not the only one where this is like, it's not my fault.
Right.
But didn't she have like amazing blisters on her face?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be disfiguring?
Sorry, FT, we do not have a science advisor, so there's no way we can accurately answer that question, unfortunately.
But it's a con of David. It's a con of David O. Russell. I keep wanting to call him Sullivan, but it's a con because she would be disfigured, but she's not, so it's just fine. I liked it. I noted it though, as you noted. I just noted it, and I noted it.
So the science oven. I feel like David O. Russell uses a lot of metaphors. Is the science oven a metaphor, FT?
Like or as something.
Yeah, and sorry, for the audience who for some reason is listening to this podcast who's never seen this film.
A metaphor before.
The science oven is a microwave oven we're talking about. So I think Rosalind declares what the metaphor is. She tells him when Irving comes home and is upset about the latest fire in the kitchen. She says, the science oven, this is just like I forget what she says. It's just like all your scams, Irving. They're all empty.
Right.
They're all hollow.
Right.
The science oven. I read an article. It takes all the nutrition out of our food. Just like so it's empty calories, just like your plots.
Thank God that I got rid of it. She goes, you have to thank me. Right. And he goes, yes, thank you. I liked also the bit where she goes, why don't you marry, Carmine and you get a little necklace with a little microwave on it.
Yeah.
Good writing. Good writing. We go to Teterboro then, right?
I wanted to go to another metaphor.
Like or as what?
The nail polish.
Right. Earlier on, right in the Italian, yes, in the restaurant with the piccata from heaven. It did look good.
Yes. But the discussion is she can't get over the smell of the nail of this nail polish because there's something rotting in there, something disgusting. It smells so great.
Yes, flowers and garbage, she says later.
Is that a metaphor?
Like or as what?
Well, I think, I think the idea, the film, everybody's covering up. So everybody's, Christian Bale's covering up, or Irving's covering up everybody's covering something up. And the idea of this nail polish is, this beautiful smelling stuff, but it's deep down, there's rotting, there's garbage.
Right, you're using con men to be able to do a public service.
Right.
So in other words, you were you're breaking the spirit of the law to be able to support the law. Yeah.
I'd like to jump to the casino opening scene.
Yes. Right, you mean the big sequence.
The sequence, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
They're in the car with Elton John's song Yellow Brick Road playing. And then they pull up at this casino for this grand opening. And that scene is just so visually powerful, mostly because of the production design and the wardrobe, because of the colors.
Yes.
Irving's and Sidney pull up in this baby blue Cadillac, very distinctive color and a great paint job. And the blue, and the scene is this interplay between blue and red. So the blue Cadillac, and then they get out of the car, and Carmine's wife hands her a gift bag with her favorite smelly nail polish in this bright red bag, which jumps out. Rosalind's got these bright red nails. Irving's in a blue tuxedo, which is there for, usually I don't see blue. So Irving's blue, and the car was blue, And then we see coming towards them through the smoke because these lights exploded. And walking through the smoke come Sydney and Richie coming through the smoke. And Richie, as I said, is gray. And Sydney, the love of Irving's life, or the one of the loves of Irving's life, is split between them because she's wearing a blue dress with a gray fur coat on top of it. So she's both gray and blue.
How about that?
And then what's interesting too is just then there becomes this standoff between Rosalind and Sydney / Edith, where Rosalind says, "I know who you are."
Yeah.
And they are like two animals, two jungle cats about to go out at each other. And of course, they're both decked out in these big fur coats like animals. So well done production design and wardrobe and David O. Russell.
Yes, and it's a sequence because it's a sequence of scenes.
Okay.
Because there's that scene outside, and then there's the scene inside.
Right.
Then inside we go, where he talks about the casino, blah blah blah. And then they're all at the bar, right, where we meet what I called in my notes the Hitler boy,
Right.
That weird
Yes.
haircut,
Yes.
The
boyfriend.
Then the next scene of importance is, of course, the troubling and troublesome, and I think difficult scene with Taleggio, when Robert De Niro comes in, the real casino guys from Florida.
Yes.
Number one, it's one of the weakest. I mean, it's interesting because we find out that De Niro character Taleggio speaks Arabic, and so there's the con there that's exposed, and there's a few things that happen. Number one, the FBI guy, the Mexican fellow who's posing as the sheik, there's a bad dub job there.
Okay.
Because take a look at it. It's weird. His mouth doesn't move. And you keep wondering, how are you going to get out of this very difficult scene where De Niro's basically asking this guy, communicate with me. And I'm going like, oh no, don't have like a telephone ring. And sure enough, it's a second old cliche of cliches. The drunk dump, crashes into the table, and all that bullshit.
Right.
The weird thing is that it's a fucked up scene, mainly because then it goes to Edith and Rosalind in the bathroom, which you're going to pass over, okay? But
no, we should.
And then
we
it
should
comes back. Then it comes back to them where before we go to the bathroom, they get up and leave.
Right.
But then we go to the bathroom, and then we come back to them, and they're still sitting at the table.
Right.
So that's when I said I'm like, I'm going to be shamelessly, immaturely nitpicking, but I'm like, wow, something went wrong with the improvisational design there. With the story. But he pulls it off because I didn't notice it the first time. And that scene between Rosalind and Edith in the bathroom, it really just has to be seen and heard and watched.
Right.
It is such an incredible acting job of both of them. And the dialogue is just fantastic,
Right. I'd like to jump, if we could, to the sequence, and definitely the sequence that intercuts between Rosalind cleaning house and Irving being taken for a ride by the mobsters.
Yeah, which I would call an imperfect parallel action because
it starts as a parallel action, and then they do something interesting,
absolutely.
which is they break the parallel action to then have. We see and of course the audience is like, what the hell happened to Irving in the car? And then we cut to Irving coming home, and he says,
"With your boyfriend,
do you know where I was?" And she says, "Where?" And he says, "He put a fucking canvas bag over my head." So
well done, Ken.
Yeah, but the scene, that sequence was well done, and apparently was not in the script. It was only in the editing room that they hit upon the idea of using that parallel action. And then I think even better not to continue the parallel action, than to break it up and have him come in and tell it, and then do it in flashback. It's using a lot of editing and cinematic techniques there all in a few minutes.
I agree. I liked it, because another parallel action after the, several would have been too much. And I noticed, and I went, good move,
Right. If you have too many pieces of parallel action in a row, you end up with a rectangle. So Rosalind.
Asymptote.
Rosalind cleaning the house. The song is Paul McCartney and Wings' Live and Let Die, which was part of a James Bond movie called Live and Let Die. And it's so well done. She's wearing these big yellow rubber gloves up to her elbows, And she's very ferocious. She's whipping her head back and forth. So of course they put her in a leopard skin house dress to play that up. By the way, she ended up spraining her neck. Jennifer Lawrence, no surprise. If you watch that, her whipping her head back and forth,
oh man,
she sprained her neck. With the other great thing, there's one angle, if you watch it carefully, as she's, we see her whipping her head around, cleaning, dusting things down, and there's one angle where you see the kitchen cabinets behind her, and they're just blackened from the previous microwave science oven.
So she's not going to clean that.
Well, it's unclean. It's unclean. I mean, the cabinets are burned.
Yes.
Little piece of trivia there, FT. David O. Russell, he didn't want to get held over a barrel paying millions of dollars for Live and Let Die. So he was like, I want to try to get Live and Let Die, but if they know I need it, they're going to charge me too much money. So he made her actually do that to two different songs.
What's the other song?
Santana's Evil Ways.
Oh, nice. Good one, Ken.
And I wonder if the footage of her deleted scene of her dancing to cleaning to Evil Ways is out there somewhere. I'd like to see it, but having seen this, I have a hard time thinking that Evil Ways would be better than Live and Let Die. Because Live and Let Die is so dramatic.
And it's thematic.
It's thematic. It's dramatic. It's melodramatic.
Automatic.
No, and it's also great because to Live and Let, I don't know what would happen in Evil Ways. They must have had to fade it out. But Live and Let Die has these parts where it gets loud and soft, and as you know, it gets soft, and which allows us to cut to Jennifer Lawrence talking to Danny after that with the great thing, the great line.
And you know that I would never say anything bad about your father in front of you, but your father is a sick son of a bitch.
Daddy's a sick son of a bitch.
Don't repeat that. But yeah.
What happens then next? You hear the door slam, and we hear him yelling, Irving yelling.
Yeah. Yes. Do you know where I was?
He put a fucking canvas bag over my head!
They put a fucking canvas bag over my head.
Take two. Good one, Ken. We got to, in the editing,
you got to put heavy reverb on it. They put a fucking canvas bag over my head. I want to jump all the way then, if I could, in the interest of time and our sanity, and saving on tape costs, to the FBI celebration after they get Alphonse Simone to take the money. They cut to the FBI office where they're all drinking and celebrating, and of course Louis C.K. is slumped over on the couch.
Yes,
and then Richie, Bradley Cooper as Richie, goes over and starts humping Louis C.K.
smacking him on the ass. Yes.
Yeah, so Louis C.K. leaves, and then Bradley Cooper then gets on the couch and imitates Thorson, the Louis C.K. character. It's so great
because that's a hard thing to pull off. That's different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other than just people going yippee, yay. It's creative.
All right. So why don't we kind of quickly go through some of the various department heads on the film and actors, actresses, and then wrap this one up. I think we can kind of gloss over. We've already talked a lot about a lot of these things, but why don't we quickly dip into cinematography. Director of photography was Linus Sandgren, who had not done very much before American Hustle. I saw he had worked with the production designer on a film, I think, and maybe that's how he got this gig. He also did La La Land after American Hustle, which I thought looked pretty good and was not an easy film to shoot. You've never seen La La Land, have you, FD?
That's correct.
You should at least put up the opening sequence, which is pretty amazing, if nothing else. But what did you think of Linus Sandgren's work on American Hustle?
Adequate.
I agree. Do you hold that against Linus Sandgren?
No. I think, I think that was part of the intention here. I mean, it was such a character-driven story, in my opinion, that...
You're saying, since it's a character story, we don't have to make it look good? Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't say it looked bad.
Right.
We don't have to make it look super great.
Yeah,
we don't have to make photography the key thing here.
I think it comes back to what we talked about at the top of the podcast, which is, if the director wants to strap on a Steadicam and run around, if you have to light 180 degrees or more, or you don't know what you're lighting, the lighting can't look that great.
It lights everything up. There's no bad shadows. It's like,
So yeah. I think knowing that the camera, that it's not like we're going to shoot this person in 3/4 profile. Let's light it. Since you really didn't know where the camera was going to go, given that limitation, I thought it looked if you got a gradient on that curve, I think it looked probably more than adequate, given that he had a light for that scenario.
In general, yeah. The work on the large scenes in the ballroom is good.
Right.
And also the intimate scenes early on with Danny and Irving, when he comes in early and just in that little bedroom scene, it's nice.
Right. Why don't we move on from cinematography to production design? We've already spent a lot of time talking about production design, so we should note that the production designer was Judy Becker, who had who's worked with David O. Russell quite a lot. She worked with him on The Fighter, Silver Linings Playbook, and came back for this one. What'd you think of the production design, FT?
It's great.
Yeah, no, it really, I think, really worked to support the film, and Judy Becker pulled off what is, I always think, the toughest thing to pull off in production design, which is to take stuff that's meant to look ugly, or dated or ugly, gaudy, yeah, whatever, and make it and turn it into an aesthetically pleasing thing to look at, which she did well.
Yeah, even like the sort of the dingy scene where De Niro's in the back room, where he even says so. I don't want to be at a fancy bar. This is perfect, and they throw the tablecloth over the shitty table.
Right.
It's I liked it.
Yes, costume design, Michael Wilkinson.
I wish that Irving would have put on that plaid suit jacket early on, that sport coat. That, when he was going through the dry cleaning stuff, saying, like, you won't believe the stuff people leave when they get drunk and blah, blah, blah. And, I just wanted to see him in it. It'd be funny. But I was a little bothered by all the boob shots. I mean, I like boob shots, don't get me wrong. But Amy Adams, every dress almost.
Yes.
Every dress was just like boobs hanging out.
Yes.
Which I felt to be, overdoing it.
Where did she work before hooking up with Irving?
No, I understand that, but
where did she work? Tell the audience.
Well, you tell me. I mean, she was a stripper, wasn't she?
No, she worked for Cosmopolitan magazine.
But she was a stripper before that,
right? Yes. So I think that the plunging necklines were in keeping with that and the 70s, and also, So I think it was motivated.
Yeah, but I thought it was monotonous. I thought that maybe she would, mix it up a little bit, or they have the character mix it up a little bit.
You needed some ass shots to break up the monotony.
Exactly.
Yes, I thought the costume design was fantastic. The danger of 70s period pictures is you go over the top with look at those crazy 70s lapels, and I think this was able to walk the line, and also the wardrobe was so coordinated with production design as it should be. I thought it was excellent. But that's my opinion. That's just my opinion, but I'm not an ass man like you are.
What about hairstyles? Jeremy Renner's, man.
Oh yeah, it really bothered me. I thought it took me out of the picture, his haircut, and it's weird that you brought that up. I wasn't going to mention it. I felt Renner was he didn't feel real, and what's so odd. Is when I was reading about the film, people who knew that mayor, whose real name wasn't Carmine, whatever, he was a different name, they all remarked that Renner completely was exactly that guy. Like he brought he was the guy was dead at this point, and they're like Renner brought him back to life. He was exactly like him, and apparently Renner really studied, film this guy, and but it's one of these cases where maybe by trying to be too true to that guy made it not work so well for the film because I felt he just didn't feel very realistic.
Oh, for me it was perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I really felt it was perfect. One little thing, we used to talk about names and why the names are chosen.
Yes.
The name Polito.
Okay. Small chicken, right? Isn't that what it translates to?
No. Clean, honest, educated, civil.
Huh.
How about that? It's from
polite,
French.
polite.
Polite. Ippolito, Polito. Yeah. Because remember, he keeps saying, You dragged me back. I left.
I think they start with that scene and break away, come back to it. It's the scene in the suite where they're trying to give Carmine Polito, the mayor, Jeremy Renner, the briefcase, and Bradley Cooper does it very clumsily, just shoves it at Jeremy Renner, so he leaves. And it's a great it's a great scene because Christian Bale's character says, Bradley Cooper's, you got to get him back. You got to get him back. You got to get him back. And Christian Bale says, what do you want from me? I did my job. He doesn't like you. I can't make him like you. And it reminded me so much of what you always say to me about this podcast. I did my job. I can't make these people like you.
Well placed. Excellent. Yes.
Since we've already veered into actors by talking about Jeremy Renner, why don't we go right for that? Talk about the, in general, the acting in the film was pretty unbelievably good. But getting into
high class,
specific lead actors, what do you have to say about who do you think wins the acting award for male actors in a leading role?
Well, Christian Bale. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, I felt Bradley Cooper was great. I mean, and I do like how it was hidden all along. When I watched it the second time, I was like, he's coked up from the start. By the way,
right.
The way he's with Amy Adams in jail,
right?
So that was a character choice. And of course I can't prove it, but I just got the strong feeling upon second viewing that. I'm outside the box. Maybe I'm,
right.
And I like you when he does that, business. But Christian Bale wins the show for me. It's just, as always. Yeah. I mean, the guy's incredible.
So nothing specific about Christian Bale?
What, scene by scene? I mean, the way his intention at the beginning when he's doing his hair, the way he deals at the end with, Jennifer Lawrence. Do you have something that you want to talk about? Something?
No. When I said, "Do you have anything specific on Christian Bale?" I was sincerely hoping
you did.
No, I was sincerely hoping you were going to say no, so we could move on to talk more about Bradley Cooper. Who?
Well, go ahead. Move on to Bradley.
Bradley Cooper. Interesting. I agree that Christian Bale, I think, would get the award for Best Actor in this film. Bradley Cooper, I think, Bradley Cooper has the problem of being a kind of a bankable movie star, but whose acting, I think, continues to improve. He talked about, he had worked with Bob De Niro before. Obviously, he worked with him on Silver Linings Playbook, but had worked with him on another film before that. And Cooper talks about whatever that first film was, they were doing a table read. And Bradley Cooper's was shocked that De Niro was doing so little. It was like, what's going on here? And realized that eventually less in film is more if you can do the internal work. Also, a very strange story with Bradley Cooper that falls under the category of truth being way stranger than fiction. So Bradley Cooper was a student at the Actors Studio in New York. Were you aware of that, FT?
Yes.
Do you remember the TV show Inside the Actors Studio?
I sure do.
Yeah. So many years before this movie was filmed, Louis C.K. is on a radio program in England. And he does this bit about how lame the students are inside the Actors Studio. And he does this whole bit about, because the audience members would always stand up and, ask, say things like to Sean Penn, Mr. Penn, Bob, and Louis C.K.'s thing was like, if you have to ask Sean Penn what it takes to be a star, you're never going to be a star. And as it turns out, and it's out there on the internet, and maybe somebody can find it and plug it into this podcast, Bradley Cooper was a student at the Actors Studio, and when they did a TV show with Sean Penn at Inside the Actors Studio, Bradley Cooper was in the audience and says to Sean Penn,
"Hey, Mr. Penn, my name is Bradley Cooper. I'm a second-year actor. My question's regarding Hurley Burley. What was it like to revisit a character, Eddie, after a 10-year hiatus? Did you have new discoveries? Did you find that it was a different approach because you had already done this character before?"
A very strange turn of events there.
It is interesting how young he is there to see him as the student, because when you watch the other shows with Johnny Depp and it's other people, you'll see people that you'll never see again,
right?
But you see the young Bradley Cooper who doesn't really quite look like him yet,
right? So since we brought him up already, he's definitely a supporting actor in this cast. Louis C.K. How did you feel about his work in this film?
It was really great. The guy really pulled it off for me,
Well,
you didn't like it?
It's was a big Louis C.K. fan. A little bit less now. It's part of the problem. It's like the Manhattan problem. You're aware of that problem, FT?
I am not.
Well, sometimes it's called the Manhattan conundrum.
I'm no more or less aware of it.
Well, it's the problem. So Louis C.K., I used to love Louis C.K. I used to always watch the show Louis. And then, of course, Louis C.K. got not sort of Me Too'd, but peripherally Me Too'd. As you know, he was accused or did, in fact, masturbate in front of women and was, they took his show down and it became persona non grata. Sorry, the analog is, and then I was like, oh man, I really miss Louis C.K. And so I went out and bought all the Louis shows on Blu-ray to watch them and thinking they're going to be so great and nobody's going to stop me from watching Louis C.K. just because he masturbates in front of women. But then when I watched the show, either because that was stuck in my head or maybe they weren't so good, I really wasn't liking them so much. But that brings us to the Manhattan problem, which you now know.
I do not. I know it neither more nor less.
So you're in the Manhattan,
because that really worked. You really
right. So the Manhattan problem is the Woody Allen issues with Woody Allen and young girls. When you watch Manhattan, which is a classic film, when you watch the stuff with him taking Marielle Hemingway out to, it was Marielle Hemingway, right? As the young, out to the movie theaters and that relationship, it makes it difficult to watch Manhattan, knowing what you know about Woody Allen, just like, I don't know, but it didn't. So coming back to Louis C.K.
I have a personal story about sort of, what do you call it? Several removes about Louis C.K.
Okay.
That in the Madison Square Garden show about the bats.
Like Bats in the Belfry?
Yes. He speaks about being in a kitchen in a country house. I found out subsequently, friends of mine owned the house and sold it to Louis C.K. And that was the very kitchen where I had the bad Clams Casino and came to within inches of aspirating. Yeah, it was tough.
Do you know Clams Casino were originally called Clams That Are Safe, and then they got sued after so many people got sick, and then they changed it to Clams Russian Roulette, and then they changed it to Clams Casino. Because, it's because of the breadcrumbs and stuff. Just
they soak up the toxins.
That have laid so many low.
Yes.
So my thought on Louis C.K. in this film was, I'm glad he's in it, and I love the scenes that he's in, and I love the ice fishing story and the way it keeps replaying. But he doesn't seem like the FBI supervisor. He always seems like Louis C.K., which pulls me out of the film a little bit.
Well, that's your problem. I mean, he struck me as a real Michiganian. Having know people from Michigan.
Right.
It struck me as that kind of Midwestern guy.
Yeah.
So when Bradley Cooper does say, you understand I'm a passionate guy. I'm from New York.
Right.
He's from Michigan. He does ice. I was just like, yep. He's like one of those guys that goes, "Can I continue my statement, please?"
It's a conundrum for me.
Conundrum rolled into a Clams casino.
It's there's some of my favorite moments are the ones with Louis C.K. in this film. But like I said, at the same time, it pulls me out of the film a little bit. Why don't we move on to actresses, female actors in a leading role in this film? Yeah. Were there any good ones in your opinion?
Oh, yeah, of course. There were two leads that were, fantastic. Amy Adams, her work, every time where there's a betrayal or the difficulties in relationships, with Irving and then with Richie later on, her work is just stunning. And Jennifer Lawrence pulling off that screwball insanity, so believable.
Yes.
Where she twists everything that's so crazy to be like,
thank goodness for me.
Thank goodness for me. It's my idea. And then the best was when she's at the end going like, Irving, I know this is really hard for you, but you have to grow up. We need a divorce. I was just like, I was laughing my ass off. I was like, this is like, thank God for actresses.
Right. She was reading Wayne Dyer.
Right. Who is that?
He's like a pop culture psychologist. He's like a Dr. Phil from the 1970s.
Intention. It's just, it's good. But Amy Adams is just, so there. I mean, her, and that scene that you referred to earlier when, she turns back to Sydney from Lady Edith, that is just fantastic work,
Who do you think? If only one, there can only be one best actress from this film. Who would it be? You have to. You have to.
I'd have to flip a coin, honestly.
Well, don't do that because you'll need it for bridge money, bridge tolls. You got who? If you had a gun to your head, who do you pick? Amy Adams or Jennifer Lawrence?
Jennifer Lawrence.
Really? Well, that's great because it leaves me free to pick Amy Adams, and that's who that's who I would pick. And I'm working on a theory. Why do you always have to mock me?
To use his line, I bet it's a doozy.
I think it is.
Is it a doozy? Say it.
I think it's a doozy, but you can be the judge of it. So it's the redheaded actress theory. Why are you laughing?
I don't know. Because it sounds like a good one. It sounds like a doozy.
No, it's that redheaded women are genetically predisposed to being great actors.
Like who do you have in mind, Ken?
Well, Amy Adams is a redheaded actor.
And I rest my case.
No, and sorry now because you screwed up my head. I forgot. So Amy Adams is obviously a redheaded. Actress, and then of course Julianne Moore is a redheaded actress, and my wife is a redhead. I at least from my personal experience with my wife, emotions are readily accessible to redheaded
readily readily available.
No, I wasn't making a pun, but
yes, you were.
I feel just from knowing my wife for a long time, her ability to access anger, extreme anger, when she's with me. So I see these redheaded actors. I just think they're able to access their emotions better. But
yes,
that's my theory.
And I wonder if your wife also is a good actress in that she loves you. What about Lucille Ball? She's a redhead.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Sissy Spacek, I believe, is a real.
Yes.
Shirley MacLaine, maybe.
See, you're on board now.
But not Rita Hayworth, the most famous of the old school. She's died. Did you know that?
She died.
She was a dyed redhead.
I know she died.
She's a dyed redhead.
Oh, really?
She was a fake redhead. Yeah. She was dark-haired.
Oh.
But that was a plan, Yes.
So you're buying.
so this is the biggest cliche in the world, of course.
What?
Fiery, hot,
right?
Red.
What, Frank?
Ken?
It's only a cliche because it's true.
I've heard that.
So you like my theory?
I think your theory is devastatingly amazing.
Okay. So this is only the fourth They Shoot Films podcast. We've already developed the redheaded actress theory, the David Lynch, Mel Brooks theory,
Yes.
the strap a Steadicam on a dude and have him run around theory.
Right. Rather than strap the Steadicam on his back theory, which we may get to in another podcast.
What about supporting actors? You look. This movie has a cast of thousands, literally.
Yeah, it sure does.
But let's talk about some of the Well, first of all, were there any bad supporting actors?
None that I could come up with. Carmine's wife.
Yeah,
well, she was great. We're not going to call Posner, whatever, supporting. Well, I guess we would.
Wait. What do you mean? Who's Posner? What are you talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. Who played Carmine?
Oh, Jeremy Renner.
Renner. What the fuck?
I was tempted when you said Posner. I was just going to lay out because he knows what he's talking about. I don't know what he's talking about, so I'm just going to lay out. And then I was like, I had to ask, and you're like, oh shit,
I don't know.
Okay, so
there were. I liked everybody that was supporting. The guy that played the FBI supervisor.
Yes.
He was great.
I'm trying to give people names, and I don't
got it right here. Alessandro Nivola.
Yes, so you talked about Alphonse Simone, and of course he had a dual role because he was also, I forget his name, something Malone, the cold cut,
yes.
Dave Malone, the cold cut king of Long Island.
Yes.
So that was played by the late, great Paul Herman, who always kind of tended to play the same roles. He worked in a couple of Scorsese films. He was very famously the accountant in the long-running HBO show Entourage. I always like what you watched Entourage?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're killing me. You're blowing me away here, FT, because I would never. With your highbrow proclivities, with your love of I Heart Huckabees, I would have never figured you for liking Entourage. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I was a witness to it because my Scarlett loved it. She really liked it a lot, quite a bit. Moving on, Jack Houston.
Jack Houston played Jennifer Lawrence's boyfriend, right?
Pete.
Who, my problem with Pete, he put a fucking canvas bag over my head. Actually, that's unfair. It wasn't Pete. It was the guy in the back seat.
It was the guy in the back seat,
Michael Pena, we mentioned him before.
Yes.
I always tend to like Michael Pena, and he was excellent as the first fake act, right? Or no, he was.
He's the second because the first one is Saeed.
Yeah,
I'm looking at his name, Tug Mahody. Right. He's the aluminum siding and roofing guy from Queens, but. He's also the main torturer in Three Kings.
Oh, good one, FT. That was
Yep, he plays the really
famously
bro. Hey, bro. When he goes, hey, bro, and he fucking.
He sorry if you haven't seen Three Kings, Mark Wahlberg's character gets captured by the Iraqi by Saddam Hussein's people, of which this actor that Frank FT is just referencing. So he's taken captive and. This actor, this character goes to torture Mark Wahlberg, hooks him up to electrodes to torture him, but first says, "So tell me, what's the deal with Michael Jackson's face?" So you have to see it. But,
it's incredible. It's a really painful. Well, remember what his point is in that movie. His point is that's what your culture makes people do: bleach their skin.
Right.
So it was pretty intense. And that was a really rough scene in that film.
Very rough. Because of course he takes a CD and uses it to force oil down Mark Wahlberg's throat.
Yeah.
Yes, I've done that
to myself
when I'm not regular. when I'm not regular, it works. 10W40.
They used to when you go to Oil City, Pennsylvania, when the oil was just coming out of the rocks. They used to bottle it as a medicinal thing. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and I can't wait for us to have a science advisor. No, there's so mineral oil, which is for internal use, right?
Sometimes, yes,
is a medical product that is just refined motor. It's motor oil. It's just further refined.
You're kidding me.
No.
Who needs a science advisor? We don't need any stinking science advisor.
This episode of Film Symposium West was brought to you by Mineral Oil. All right, FT, we're going to wrap this one up unless you've got anything else you want to shoehorn in here. Oh, you do? Okay.
I want to shoehorn in one little thing.
Okay.
And her name is Melissa McKeegan.
Okay.
We see her first at the party, the New Year's party.
Right.
And then we see her as Alphonse Simone's secretary, again silent, taking notes.
You brought this up earlier in the podcast.
Earlier,
right?
yeah.
So sorry. Is
She's the prostitute in the holdovers.
You now know it.
It is her. I confirmed it.
How did you manage to confirm it while our podcast was being recorded?
A miracle. The Holy Ghost came and told me.
So it is true. So she was the prostitute from the holdovers, and was she in anything else of note?
Yes, I believe she was one of the sisters. Since the Holy Ghost told me, in the Fighter. Is that the name of the movie?
Yeah, the sisters.
Yeah. She's one of the sisters.
Wow. Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Yeah. Are you, you don't want to give this one up. I know you're having a good time, FT. I'm having a good time. I'm concerned the audience is no longer having a good time. So do you think we might want to wrap this one up?
Like with a bow? Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening. If you are listening, we do need a science advisor. And you can help us get a science advisor, but please, wherever you listen to podcasts, just hit follow or subscribe, or whatever you want to do. Tell your friends about us. Everybody, I wouldn't just say, hey, I want to tell you about a podcast. Say, science is important. And there's a podcast that needs a science advisor, and you can help by subscribing. And they will say, well, what about USAID? A USAID, my tax money is already going to stuff like that. And you can point out, no, this is all being cut by Doge. So the only way you can have science on these podcasts now is not the government, but by subscribing to They Shoot Films. So thanks, FT. Thanks for everything. Have a good one. We'll see you next time on They Shoot Films.
Right on.
Bye-bye.
They Shoot Films is a production of Film Symposium West. Produced by Anne-Marie De Palma. Studio announcer Roy Blumenfeld.